On the morning of January 3rd, 2026, Detective Sarah Morrison received a call that would haunt her for the rest of her career. A landlord in Detroit, Michigan, had discovered something disturbing in the basement apartment of his rental property on Woodward Avenue. The landlord, 62-year-old Marcus Henderson, had been trying to reach his tenant for 3 weeks. The rent was overdue, and the man who called himself David Chen had stopped responding to calls and messages. When Marcus finally used his master key to enter the unit, the smell hit him first. It was not the smell of death, but something far more unsettling. It was the smell of chemicals, burnt plastic, and something metallic that made his eyes water. The apartment was dark. Every window had been covered with thick black garbage bags and duct tape. No light entered from outside. Marcus flipped the light switch, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The living room had been transformed into what looked like a makeshift laboratory. Tables were covered with notebooks, maps, and dozens of photographs. But these were not normal photographs. They were surveillance pictures of people, hundreds of them, men, women, and children going about their daily lives, completely unaware they were being watched. Marcus stumbled backward and immediately called 911. Within 20 minutes, Detective Morrison and her team arrived at the scene. What they found in that basement would become one of the most disturbing cases in Detroit's recent history. The notebooks contained detailed schedules. When people left for work, when children walked to school, when families went to bed. David Chen, or whoever he really was, had been stalking at least 40 different individuals across the Detroit metropolitan area. The maps showed routes, timings, and patterns. One notebook had a title written in red ink: Phase 1 complete. Phase 2 begins January 10th. But David Chen was gone. He had vanished without a trace 3 days before Marcus entered the apartment. His real identity remains unknown. The name David Chen was fake. The social security number he provided was stolen from a deceased man in California. Every piece of identification he gave was fraudulent. The Detroit Police Department contacted every person in those photographs. Most had no idea they were being watched. Some reported strange feelings of being followed in the weeks before. One woman, 34-year-old Jennifer Walsh, broke down crying when shown the photos. There were over 200 pictures of her, getting coffee, walking her dog, entering her home. The most disturbing photo showed Jennifer sleeping in her bedroom, taken from outside her window. The FBI joined the investigation. They discovered that the equipment in the apartment was sophisticated. Hidden cameras, listening devices, and long-range photography gear were thousands of dollars. This was not the work of an amateur. This was someone trained, methodical, and patient. To this day, David Chen has never been found. The investigation revealed he paid rent in cash, never had visitors, and was described by neighbors as quiet and polite. Security footage from nearby businesses showed a man in his 30s with dark hair and glasses, but facial recognition software found no matches in any database. The question that haunts everyone involved is simple and terrifying. What was Phase 2? Detective Morrison still keeps the case file on her desk. She reviews it every week, hoping for a breakthrough. The 40 victims have been given protection and support, but they live with constant fear. Some have moved to different states. Others installed security systems and live behind locked doors. Marcus Henderson sold the property 6 months later. He could not bring himself to enter that basement again. The new owners renovated completely, tearing out everything and starting fresh. But the memory remains. On January 10th, 2026, exactly 1 week after the discovery, nothing happened. No crimes were reported. No one was harmed. But that only made it worse, because everyone knew that somewhere out there, a man with a plan was waiting, watching, preparing for something that may still be coming. The photographs are stored in evidence. The notebooks are being analyzed by behavioral specialists, and every detective working the case asks the same question before going to sleep: who was he watching next? In Detroit, 40 people look over their shoulders every day. They check their windows before bed. They vary their routines. They live in fear of a man whose face they barely know and whose intentions remain a mystery. The basement apartment on Woodward Avenue stands empty now, but the terror that was born there continues to spread, one sleepless night at a time. On the evening of January 7th, 2026, security guard Thomas Whitaker reported something impossible at the abandoned Riverside Mall in Columbus, Ohio. What he discovered on the surveillance system would force authorities to reopen a case that had been closed for 15 years. Thomas had been working night shifts at the mall for 3 months. The massive shopping center had been closed since 2011, left to decay after the economic downturn. The property management company hired Thomas to prevent vandalism and keep squatters out. His job was simple: walk the empty corridors, check the doors, and monitor the old security camera system that somehow still worked. The mall was enormous. 3 floors, over 200 stores, all sitting in darkness. Thomas hated the place. The escalators frozen in time, the fountains dry and cracked, the food court tables covered in dust. But the pay was good, and he needed the money. On that January night, Thomas was sitting in the security office reviewing footage from the previous evening. The cameras were old, the video quality poor, but they captured movement. At exactly 11:47 in the evening, camera 12 on the second floor picked up something that made Thomas drop his coffee. A figure was walking through the mall, not running, not hiding, just walking casually, as if shopping during business hours. Thomas rewound the footage. The figure appeared to be a woman, wearing what looked like clothing from the early 2000s. She walked past the closed stores, stopped at a window, appeared to look inside, then continued walking. Thomas checked the timestamp. This footage was from the night before, when he was patrolling the first floor. He'd been alone in the building. The doors were locked. The alarm system showed no breaches. Yet someone had been walking on the second floor. He scrolled through more footage. Camera 15 caught the same woman entering what used to be a department store. Camera 18 showed her sitting on a bench near the frozen fountain, just sitting there for 17 minutes. Camera 23 captured her entering the restroom. Thomas felt his hands shaking. He radioed his supervisor, Jerry Paulson, who arrived 30 minutes later. Together, they reviewed the footage. Jerry's face went pale. He picked up his phone and called the Columbus Police Department. Detective Raymond Cole arrived at 2 in the morning. He watched the footage 3 times before speaking. Then he asked a question that made the room go cold. "Do you know about the Michelle Garrett case?" Thomas shook his head. Jerry looked confused. Detective Cole pulled out his phone and showed them a photograph. It was a missing person poster from 2009. Michelle Garrett, 23 years old, disappeared from Riverside Mall on December 15th, 2009. She was last seen leaving her job at the bookstore on the second floor. She never made it to her car. No body was ever found. The case went cold after 2 years of investigation. The woman in the surveillance footage looked exactly like Michelle Garrett. Detective Cole immediately called for backup. Within an hour, 6 officers were searching the mall. They started with the restroom where the figure was last seen on camera. Behind the restroom, they found a maintenance corridor that Thomas did not know existed. The door was hidden behind a broken advertising display. The corridor was narrow and dark. It led to a series of storage rooms beneath the mall. In the 3rd storage room, they found something that would crack the case wide open: a sleeping bag, food wrappers, bottles of water, and a diary. Someone had been living in the abandoned mall. The diary entries dated back to December 2009. The handwriting was frantic, confused. The entries described being trapped, unable to find a way out, hearing voices, seeing shadows. The last entry was dated January 18th, 2010. But that was not the most disturbing discovery. On a shelf in the storage room, police found a cell phone, Michelle Garrett's cell phone. The battery was long dead, but the forensics team was able to extract data. The last text message she sent was to her mother at 9:32 in the evening on December 15th, 2009. It read, "Someone is following me. I'm hiding in the back corridors. Please help." The message was never received. Cell service in the maintenance corridors was non-existent. The coroner's examination determined that Michelle Garrett had died of dehydration and exposure sometime in late January 2010. She'd been trapped in those corridors for over a month, unable to find her way out in the dark maze beneath the mall. Her remains were found sealed behind a collapsed wall in a fourth storage room, discovered only after police used ground-penetrating radar. But the question remained, who was on the surveillance footage? The property management company brought in technical experts. They examined the security system and discovered something chilling. The cameras had been malfunctioning for years, occasionally playing corrupted footage from their archives. The woman Thomas saw was not a ghost. It was old footage from December 2009, the night Michelle disappeared, somehow corrupting into the current feed and playing on loop. Michelle Garrett had been walking through the mall that night, being followed by someone. The old footage captured her final moments before she fled into the maintenance corridors, trying to escape whoever was chasing her. Police reopened the investigation into who was following her that night. Security footage from 2009 was recovered and enhanced. A male figure appeared in several frames, always staying in shadows, always keeping distance. The case remains open. Thomas Whitaker quit his job the next day. The Riverside Mall was permanently sealed by the city. Michelle Garrett was finally laid to rest by her family, 17 years after she disappeared. But sometimes, according to urban explorers who break into the sealed building, Camera 12 still shows a young woman walking through empty corridors, forever trapped in her final night. On January 1st, 2026, at exactly midnight, 374 people across the United States received an identical text message from their own phone numbers. The message contained information that should have been impossible to know. The first report came from Portland, Oregon. 29-year-old software engineer Kevin Marsh was celebrating New Year's Eve with friends when his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and felt his blood turn to ice. The message was from his own number. It read, "Kevin, you will find her in the basement. Check behind the water heater. I'm sorry you have to see this. Call the police immediately." Kevin laughed nervously and showed his friends. They assumed it was a glitch, maybe a prank app someone installed on his phone as a joke. But Kevin felt uneasy. He lived alone in a small house he had purchased 6 months earlier. The house had a basement he rarely entered. It was old, musty, and filled with the previous owner's forgotten junk. At 1 in the morning, after his friends left, Kevin could not shake the feeling. He grabbed a flashlight and went down to the basement. His hands were shaking as he moved boxes and old furniture aside. Behind the old water heater, hidden beneath loose floorboards, he found a black plastic bag. Inside the bag were human remains. Kevin called 911 immediately. Portland Police Department arrived within minutes. The medical examiner determined the remains belonged to a young woman, estimated to be in her early 20s. She had been dead for approximately 8 years. Dental records eventually identified her as Vanessa Reyes, a college student who disappeared in 2018. The previous owner of Kevin's house, Harold Grimshaw, had died of a heart attack in 2025, just before Kevin purchased the property. But Kevin's case was not isolated. Reports began flooding police departments across the country throughout January 1st. In Phoenix, Arizona, 34-year-old nurse Amanda Foster received a message from her own number. "Amanda, your patient in room 217 is being poisoned. Check the IV bag. Trust me, you will save his life tonight." Amanda was working the night shift at Phoenix General Hospital. Room 217 housed a 60-year-old man recovering from surgery. The message seemed absurd, but something made Amanda check. She examined the IV bag and noticed the seal had been tampered with. Hospital security was called. Laboratory analysis revealed the IV bag had been contaminated with a lethal dose of potassium chloride. The patient's life was saved. An investigation revealed that a hospital orderly, recently fired, had broken in seeking revenge. He was arrested before he could harm anyone else. In Miami, Florida, 41-year-old teacher Robert Chen received, "Robert, do not get on the boat tomorrow. The engine has been sabotaged. You will not survive. Please believe me." Robert had plans to go deep-sea fishing with friends on January 2nd. The message disturbed him enough that he contacted the boat rental company and requested an inspection. Mechanics discovered that the fuel line had been deliberately cut in a way that would cause catastrophic failure once the boat reached deep water. Someone had attempted murder. The owner's business partner, drowning in debt and hoping to collect insurance money, confessed after evidence pointed to him. By January 3rd, the FBI had identified 374 recipients across 28 states. Every single message came from the recipient's own phone number. Every message contained specific, accurate information about a crime, danger, or hidden truth. 12 people found human remains. 47 people prevented crimes. 19 people discovered they were victims of fraud or theft. 8 people learned family members were in immediate danger. The FBI Cybercrimes Division launched an investigation. Lead agent Marcus Webb assembled a team to trace the origin of the messages. The technical analysis revealed something impossible. The messages did not come from any external source. They originated from each person's own device, sent to themselves at exactly midnight Eastern Standard Time. Cell phone carriers reported no unusual network activity. No hacking was detected. No malware was found on any device. The messages simply appeared, as if each person had typed and sent them to themselves. Agent Webb interviewed dozens of recipients. A pattern emerged. Every person who received a message had been, at some point in their lives, connected to the information revealed. Kevin had unknowingly purchased a house from a killer. Amanda worked at the hospital being targeted. Robert was meant to die on that boat. The messages contained knowledge that each person could have theoretically discovered themselves, but would not have known without investigating. Behavioral psychologists joined the investigation. Their theory was disturbing. What if the messages came from the recipients themselves? Not their present selves, but their future selves, somehow sending information backward through time to prevent tragedies. The theory was dismissed as impossible. Time travel violates every known law of physics. Yet no other explanation fit the evidence. On January 15, 2026, Agent Webb himself received a message from his own number. It read, "Marcus, stop investigating. You will not like what you find. Some questions are not meant to be answered. Forget the messages. Move on." Agent Webb did not stop. He continued investigating, determined to find a rational explanation. On January 23rd, he disappeared. His car was found abandoned on a rural highway in Virginia. His phone was on the passenger seat. The last message in his phone was sent at 11:59 in the evening on January 22nd. It was sent to his own number. It read, "I warned you. Marcus Webb has not been found." The FBI closed the investigation on February 1st, 2026, citing insufficient evidence and no viable leads. The official statement claimed the messages were likely the result of a sophisticated but ultimately harmless prank by an unknown hacker group. But the 374 people who received those messages know the truth. Something reached across time on January 1st, 2026. Something that knew the past, present, and future. Something that saved lives, exposed crimes, and warned of dangers. And when Agent Marcus Webb ignored his own warning that something made him disappear, the messages have not occurred again. But every recipient lives with the same question. If they could send a message to themselves from the future, what would it say? And more importantly, Would they listen?